Howdy, howdy. Sue Devil here. I'm just doing a follow-up on the value of chevrons in multiplayer battles video because I got a good question or a comment from High Templar. He has his own channel and he does a lot of testing, and I would definitely refer anyone to go over there and take a look if they like this kind of testing. That the analysis I did was really only relevant for the specific case of miners versus dwarf warriors with great weapons in calculating the value of a chevron. And I had to think about it, and it was intended to be representative, but I thought I'd go back and look at a few more things and do some more calculations to get a little better grasp of this chevron things, because it turns out as I looked at it more, there is definitely ways to pull a little bit of value out of that last 40 gold you have, or 50 gold, or 60 gold, whatever that amount is, where you can't get an extra potion or an extra ability, or you can't squeeze an extra unit. That the way you spend that gold can be valuable. So I built this part of my spreadsheet here, and I was looking at everything here is versus great swords. So everything you see here is versus great swords. And then I looked and I upped their chevrons until I got the kill ratio to 1. Now this isn't going to be a perfect analysis, but at least it's something. And then looked at the value per chevron for miners, for example, at 23 gold in this case, and 25 gold for dwarf warriors, 25 for dwarf warriors great weapons. I did a few more here. The Savage Orc Big Guns and Savage Orcs are very low, only 7 gold. And we get down to some interesting ones down here where these halberdiers actually have a pretty good value at 38 gold. So I'm not sure what they're worth. I think 550 or something. So it may actually be valuable to put one chevron into those halberdiers if you're facing another empire leader, and he's going to bring some great swords, and you want to put those halberdiers up against them. You might be able to pull some value out of that. The point being is that generally it's not a great way to spend, but if you're going to have to spend it at the end of your build, there are better and worse ways to spend it, and we're going to go over some of those. But before we do, I also want to clarify something that High Templar was talking about, and I know the strategy professor has also talked about this. I can't remember which video he did. He's also a very good reference if you want to see some fantastic analysis. But when we're looking at the value of adding an additional chevron, you consider that if your chance to hit is 35, adding one chevron from 34 to 35 will increase your chance to hit by 2.9% and increase your damage by that same amount. The next chevron up only has an incremental increase of 2.8%, and on and on and on. The more you increase, the less gain you get from each chevron, and eventually, if you have a 90% chance to hit, every additional chevron will actually give you no increase, because that's the maximum chance to hit. And the chart, or I guess graphical, that Templar was talking about is something like this, where we have value on this side and chevrons on here, and that first chevron being the most valuable, going up that curve until we hit our peak and then level off at the maximum. I would argue that there's also something else that has value, and that is when you're going to pass the intersection between winning and losing a encounter between two units. So for example, in this one we used in the first dwarf war, and I still got it spelt wrong, I'm just going to fix that, but dwarf warriors versus miners, we see at 8 chevrons the dwarf warriors are winning, and at 9 chevrons the miners are winning. So that one chevron from 8 to 9 has to have more value than even the first one, because it's inverting this graph. You're going from losing to winning, so it has to have more value. There's no way about it. So I tried to look through some units from the various factions to see if I could find something that was really close, where we could look at this effect and do some testing to see how much value that has. So we'll go take a look at that. So here we have our vampire counts, our trusty old vampire counts, and the key matchup I'm looking at is Cairn Wraiths versus Greatswords. Now this is a close matchup as it is, and I did some testing to look at who would win in the matchup. The Greatswords should win by just looking at their cost, 950 as opposed to 850, and indeed they do. I'm sure I'll show some testing on that. And I went and started adding chevrons to see if I could get them to win. And once I added 3 chevrons, this unit of Cairn Wraith could one-on-one take this unit of Greatswords, just barely. So it would seem that that third chevron has quite a bit of value, because you go from losing the conflict to winning the conflict. But how much value does it have? And when it comes to spending that much on chevrons and ranking up your units, I mean, that's 150 gold. You have to start comparing it to the addition of another unit. So I continued the testing and added in a unit of zombies, because that will equal about 1,000 gold, and went up against these great swords to see what the result would be, to see how much value there was in those chevrons. And we'll go take a look at that testing. So the first test I did was, again, just my baseline, looking at a regular group of Cairn Wraiths versus a regular group of Greatswords, just to see about where they'd end up. I did a number of tests, and sometimes they were closer, sometimes they were a little more decisive, but really it was just to get that kind of number. You know, they were left with 43 there. Then I ranked them up, those 3 chevrons, and threw them into battle again. And well, I went to 1 and 2 and tried it out like that, but I got to 3, and I went into the combat again, and at 3 the Cairn Wraiths could pretty reliably beat the Greatswords. If you look at the end of the battle, I do take a quick mouse over the ending units, but you know, we've won the battle, so it would appear that those 3 chevrons have value. Now when we go and add in the zombies, I put the zombies and the Cairn Wraiths all together at once and fought the same battle to see if that same 150 gold to level up the Cairn Wraiths to where they could take the Greatswords would be better spent by adding another unit in the unit of zombies. Now in this particular test, the Cairn Wraiths and zombies win, but just barely. And you can see that it's a pretty close battle. Like, it was very close. I just jump cut to speed up things, but there's one thing 2 units can do that 1 unit can't. 1 unit can't be in 2 places at once, and that is the real advantage when you start comparing the units. So I ran another test to look at what could I do if I popped in my zombies, put my Cairn Wraiths to the back, and did a rear charge. How is that going to affect the outcome of the battle? And this is where, you know, the value increases really significantly by adding that single extra unit into the outcome of this combat event of the zombies versus the Greatswords. And you know, it just makes a massive difference. So when we're looking at that, I can't see even a whole lot of situations where it's going to be valuable. If you get to the, you know, you want to have a surprise in store, and you know your opponent is aware that his Greatswords can take Cairn Wraiths, and you want to give him a little surprise, maybe it would be good for that situation. But in general, that extra unit is going to outperform, because it gives you that many more options. I mean, you could always throw the zombies in the back to protect from rear charges, right? So if you do have that last 40 or 50 gold left, how do you spend it? Can you get even more value by looking at kind of the most finite information to spend it as wisely as possible? And the answer, yeah, is definitely yeah. If you look at these two units, the Chaos Warriors are going to be 50 to rank up, and these Forsaken are going to be 47. And a way to think of which unit would be better to rank up is to really go and look at their weapon strength. And that is how much damage they're going to dish out with that additional hit percentage. In this case, it's 58. And if you look at the Chaos Warriors, it's, 36. So that extra chance to hit on your Forsaken is, in the right situation, going to get you that much more damage over putting a chevron on the Chaos Warrior. And there's a lot of examples like that. Like if you need armor piercing units and you're a little short, maybe an extra chevron spent on those are going to give you a little more value. Anyways, I hope you found that information interesting. And if you have any more questions, put them in the comments below. I love analysis, and I really do enjoy and appreciate the questions. And I hope I'll see you soon.